We ready? What's today's date? February 13th. You ready? Welcome, everyone, to the February 13 Ways and Means Subcommittee. Please stand and salute the flag.
Roll call of the members of the Ways and Means Subcommittee. Councilor Morabito.
Here.
Here, Councilor Powers.
Here.
Here, Councilor Silvestri.
Here.
Here, Councilor Zambuto.
Here.
Here, and Chairman Visconti.
Here.
Here, quorum is present.
Since we have some people in the audience, what I'd like to do is start off by some public comment, and then we can get into some of the pamphlets that have been passed out. But if there is anybody that would like to make any comments, now is your time. Please come to the podium and express your comments. I would say I'd like to limit that to 3 minutes, if that is all possible. But welcome.
Thank you. And to be respectful of the time limit, I did write it down so that I could be concise. Hello, council members.
Name and address for the record.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Just for the record.
Susan Gravelisi, 43 Randall Road. I think all of you know me as an elected member of the Revere School Committee and as the vice chair of the School Building Committee. But I'm here today as a concerned citizen. As a graduate of Revere High School myself, a parent of 2 Revere Public School graduates, and the 4th generation of my family is currently attending Revere Public Schools, ranging from elementary to high school. I'm positive that most of you sitting here today echo the same longevity of history here in Revere and here in Revere Public Schools. We need a new high school. We all know this. The only way we can make a new high school a reality is to work collaboratively with the Massachusetts School Building Authority and the generous grant that they will give us of close to $200 million. That does still leave a great deal of funding for the city to provide, but I cannot imagine this conversation even happening without MSBA funding. Not capitalizing on this opportunity right now means moving to the back of the MSBA line and hoping that we get invited back at some point in time. And we have no idea when that would be or if it would ever happen again. Just as a point of information, when I say we, I mean Revere Public School and Superintendent Dr. Kelly, we first applied for MSBA funding in 2016. We were denied. We applied again in 2017, denied again. Then we applied again in 2019, and when finally were accepted into the core program. This is how long the process takes to get into this program with the MSBA. We've all worked long and hard to ensure that our children of Revere are well educated. We cannot interrupt this mission at this time. And in the meantime, our students are learning in a building that's outdated, overcrowded, and insufficient. And it would be remiss of me not to mention the fact that if we do not build a new high school, we will lose our accreditation. I'd just like to say a little quotation I got from a site. I can share the link if anyone's interested. So, quote, according to the U.S. Department of Education, accreditation ensures that schools, colleges, universities, and other education providers meet and maintain minimum standards of quality and integrity regarding to academics, administration, and related services. So what happens when we lose our accreditation? When a school loses their accreditation, they will lose out on federal and state funding. In addition, a college or university may not recognize a diploma or credits from an unaccredited high school. Students can be denied admission to colleges and universities and/or may be required to take remedial courses to make sure that they're on track. Students of these schools will also be ineligible for some scholarships when preparing for college," unquote. This is a reality. We are facing this right here, right now, in Revere, at Revere High School. The building committee has reviewed every site option, and I'm sure Mr. Visconti and Mr. Keefe can attest to that since they've been on the meetings with us for the past 3 years. If we don't build a new high school on the Wonderland site, it means that we will have no place to solve our space need for our elementary students, which means sooner rather than later, we will be looking for a site for a new middle school. We already know that there is no land available in our city, and none of us want to put ourselves in the position to have to repeat even more difficult decisions about land taking in the future. A decision to vote no will be a decision that will affect the quality of education of the Revere Public School System for a very, very long time. As elected officials, we sometimes have to make these very difficult decisions. The children of Revere are our future. Please vote yes to ensure our future. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wish to come up to the podium?
Good evening. I am Stacy Rizzo. I reside at 510 Revere Beach Boulevard in Revere. I am here as a constituent, although I also sit as a school committee member. But my family resides here. They are constituents. My children will start attending Revere schools next year. So I want what is best for my grandchildren and everyone else's children in the city. The one thing is, we all do agree that we do need a Revere High School. No one on this committee or this council has ever said no to that, and I'm grateful for that. To improve our educational opportunities, a new high school could offer a wider range of educational program and resources, such as modern technology and lab equipment and integrated career pathways, meeting the needs of the growing population, because our community is growing, as you all know, firsthand. The demand for high-quality education facilities also grow. Building a new high school can help to meet the increase in demand and ensure that all students have access to a quality education. It will also foster a positive school culture. A new high school can provide a fresh start and a positive environment for students, teachers, staff, and community. This can help foster a positive school culture that supports learning and personal growth. What some of us may not agree upon is where this high school should be built. I have been proud to sit on the building committee for 3 years. I have been proud to listen to all the experts in the field. I am not an expert, just like all of us in this room are not the experts. So the one thing I do not agree with, well, why I do agree that it should be at the Wonderland school site, the Wonderland location site, it may be commercial property, but why has it not been developed for 20 years? There is not an area in Revere that does not have MBTA bus to Wonderland. So any student has a chance to get to the school on one bus. People have spoken about the danger of students crossing Bell Circle area, but where have the concerns been when those students from Beachmont, Shirley Ave, Oak Island, those areas had to cross that area for years to attend the current location? For years, parents have dreaded the middle school lottery. It's been around for 25 years. And those running for elected offices would speak of ending it with no plan in sight. This is our opportunity to have one middle school located at the old Revere High School, allowing us to open up space for our elementary schools. If we are forced to have it located behind the current high school, that will now disrupt the learning environment for not only our students at Revere High School, but also at the Rumney Marsh Academy. After it is built, now it's a couple of more years to take down the old Revere High School and refurbish it to fields, with more distractions to the schools and the students. And what about the neighborhood, your constituents? Most who have lived there since the first one was built, over 50 years people have lived there, dealt with the traffic, dealt with it being built, and now their quality of life is another 8 to 10 years with construction, trucks, and traffic. We talk about money, but one school is going to cost the same no matter which location you put it at. Yes, we have to take land by eminent domain, which is a cost. I'd love to listen to more information as Rich Vesquet gives us in how we're going to plan for it down the future. And people say we can't afford it. We can afford it because we're losing our families. Our families are going off. Whether they still live here, they're sending their kids to other schools. Families are moving out because they want what's best for their children. I don't want to lose any more families, and I definitely don't want to lose my families in hopes of getting a better education for their children down the road. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Rizzo.
Good evening. My name is Claudia Correa, and today I'm here to speak as a resident. I reside at 15 Caruso Street. Just wanted to go over a couple of things and point out 4 important things. First, I think it's about time that we give high school the importance it deserves. High school education is really, really important. And I don't know if that has already been mentioned numerous times, but it should be. Therefore, it should be given the financial importance and funding it deserves. Second, not every high school graduate will pursue college, and we know that. We know people that have gone off to work right after high school because either financial restraints or because they're the ones who will need to provide to their families. But if graduates from a good high school are educated well and are talented, they will have a better chance in the workforce. And we're talking about young adults of Revere. Third, I've heard from folks, and I just heard it a couple of minutes ago from students. Years ago, they were already talking about building a high school. If not now, then when? That's my question, is if we don't do it now, then when, and how much is it going to cost, and what other conversations do we have to have around this? And also to talk about families moving out. Yes, I have family members who are very close to me that I asked them, hey, you need to come to the meeting. And they say, well, actually, I'm going to put my daughter through a different school that is not Revere High School. And that really hurt, honestly, is because I asked them why. They say, well, right now, I don't think that the school is prepared. And what I want to see my daughter succeed. And it's not because of the education that is given, it's just the infrastructure. Technology is advancing really fast. We need to keep up with it. And we need the infrastructure to support that. Lastly, I'm here to speak on behalf of a couple of folks, and I'm going to give you their names. One is Salome Londoño, Sebastián Londoño, Samuel Correa, Sofía Correa, Ethan Guzman, Nathan Guzman, Maximiliano Cataño, Valentino Cataño. And the reason why I'm speaking on their behalf is not because they couldn't be here, it's because they are under 5 years old. So I just want to plant that seed. Where are all these kids? 2 of them are my children, 2 others are my niece, my nephew. Some others are the children of people I work with. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Good
Name
evening.
Name and address.
Yes, Karen Martineau. I reside at 96 East Mountain Ave.
Welcome.
And not to reiterate what everyone was saying, but I have lived through 2 schools. I have lived on that street for over 60 years. I'm a graduate of that school. My mom, who lives 2 doors down from me, she's also a Revere High School graduate. 4 children went through the Revere school system, graduates, and now 2 grandchildren who also live in my home that are in the Revere school system. So just, like I said, to reiterate, I've already been there. The whole street, the whole neighborhood is basically the same. There are about 4 or 5 neighbors that bought their parents' house, so we're all in this together. We lived through the first 2 schools being the original high school and the Rumney Marsh, and it wasn't fun. So to do that again for the 3rd time, I'm not looking forward to that, and neither one of our neighbors or the neighborhood is either. They promised a lot of promises that we never saw through. Cary Ave is and was supposed to be closed. It is now open. East Mountain Ave is a drag race. If one of you or a police officer wants to come and stand on the corner of Cary Ave and East Mountain Ave and watch these cars come out at 2:20, you better make sure you have your kids inside, because it's crazy. So to go through that again, not sure it's fair to the residents of our area and the whole area. And if they do decide to take houses, I don't think that's going to work either. I don't think anybody's up for that. So why isn't it at Wonderland? I'm not sure. I worked at Wonderland. The place in the dining room, the place has been vacant for how long? That's the perfect spot for it. Why disrupt a whole neighborhood all over again for the 3rd time? Thank you.
Thank you.
Anthony Pazziali, 51 Arcadia Street. I have been in favor of the Wonderland location actually for a long time, up until about a week ago, and I'd like the committee to consider finding a location for the high school that is not within a half a mile of any type of educational facility that will be housing drug addict or substance abuse issues or mental health issues. I didn't realize how many facilities there were in the city that have this. There are quite a few. There's one actually being built or going to be built on my street that is a half a mile. It's a mile and a half from Wonderland. And my biggest concern is that these guys don't have automobiles, and their only way to get around is public transportation. So they have to go basically, they're either going to walk or take the bus over to Wonderland, and that's where all our kids are going to be. My daughter's 8 years old, goes to the Paul Revere Elementary School, will get educated in Revere, because I won't be moving, I'll be staying here. And I'd like her to go to a safe high school from a decent distance from these people. I mean, my neighborhood's not going to be that lucky. My daughter's going to grow up to these kind of people, next to these people, but I want the rest of the city, I want their kids to be safe. So when considering a location, please consider and find out if there are any of these shelters that house substance abuse users, mental health issues, or anything like that. Any of the Bay Cove type companies, please look into that. Let's keep our kids safe. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other further questions, comments?
Hi, everyone. I'm Samantha Woodman, 500 Revere Beach Boulevard. I am a recent grad of Revere High back in 2017, and then a graduate at Emmanuel College, where I got a degree in biology, and I now work as a sustainability professional. I just want to first accredit our amazing educators at Revere High and K through 12. I went to Beechmont Elementary and then Rumney Marsh Academy, and I had an excellent education at Revere schools. And the biggest problem with the current high school is that it is disruptive to the classroom. I can vividly recall a time where I was in my freshman biology class very important for bio MCAS, where it was a day after a rainstorm and the ceiling was leaking and students had to move to the other side of the classroom in order to just be educated for that period of the day. And that happened for 6 other periods. I can remember in that same classroom, there not being enough space where we had to do a heart lab outside in the hallway and figure out what are the arteries of the heart in the hallway because there's not enough space in that school. And I think it's unfair for the students to have an education in a disruptive environment. They need a space that is safe for all to be educated there. And I think that a new high school is necessary. I was told when I was in middle school that there would be a new high school for me to go to, and there never was. And there was always plans of a new high school getting built. So to echo what everyone is saying, when will a new high school actually be built? And I just want to go back to the point of we need a safe space for everyone. I can recall many times where the one elevator was not working, and we need ADA accessibility. It is unfair to students that require an elevator that they can't get to their class properly. So I just want to make sure that we all understand that this high school is disruptive to current students' education, and we really need to do something to protect our current generation in school, future generations, potentially my children's generation going to Revere High Schools, because I would love to stay in this city for that period of time where I'm growing my own family, but I'm not sure if that's going to be plausible if there's no great education for them to get in a disruptive high school. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Samantha Harrington. I live at 7 Sierra Street, and I also graduated from Revere High School back in 2017. I currently work at Fidelity Investments within their asset management as an investment research associate. I'm a recipient of the Posse Scholarship, which, for those of you who don't know, is a full tuition scholarship to some of the most prestigious universities in the country. Being able to receive this type of scholarship opened countless doors for me, and it changed my life. Had it not been for Revere High School's accreditation, I might never have been able to become a Posse Scholar at all. I never would have been able to land my dream job in finance, or even have been able to stay in Revere, because I might not have been able to afford it. I want future students to not just have the same opportunities that I had, but to have better opportunities. This is a call to action. We can do better for the youth in Revere. I think that all of the students currently in Revere, I think that they deserve to land their dream jobs, to be able to afford to stay in Revere, and to build a better community for the future. Additionally, I'm afraid for what an unaccredited high school would do to property values in the city. According to a report that I read by the National Bureau of Economic Research titled "Using Market Valuations to Assess Public School Spending," it states that every $1 spent on public schools, for that, home values increase by $20. This increase directly translates to higher home values. And I think that we should see a new high school as an incredible opportunity and an investment for Revere. Thank you.
Thank you. Come up to the podium.
Hello, everyone. My name is Frank Gucciatti. I live at 288 Vane Street in Revere. I don't want to rain on everything everyone said was great to the point. I'm all for a new high school. I'm just bringing a different approach to it. I'm on disability, SSI. My taxes are skyrocketing. My water bills are skyrocketing. I never had a child attend a Revere school or will in the future. Is there any way that these monies can be allocated differently for people that don't have any interest in, you know what I mean? Not interest, but you know what I'm saying? Wonderland Park, well, hold on. Wonderland Park is taxable income land. From what I understand, Revere owns the property that the high school's on now.
That is correct.
That's money that you're losing in the future. You know, you own a 3-family house, yeah, I'll buy a 1-family here. It's money that you can make. And you know, bringing up that people get a higher education, it brings up the home values. So did my taxes. I can't afford it as it is. I just got a $700 water bill. You know, and I've been hearing for years how they're gonna change the piping in the ground to lower our water rates. But that's all I wanna see, just a different avenue. I'm all for the high school. I'm all for children, I'm all for higher education, but just trying to get the money from different avenues. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments? Anybody wishing to speak?
Carol Ty, number 51 Endicott Avenue, still living in the same house I was born in. Grew up in Revere, had the pleasure of having my first teaching job at Revere High School almost 65 years ago. It was a lifetime that I honor. And I have had such wonderful people to be with. And even though we have sometimes differences of opinion, we come together to find out how we can do it. But it's our legacy that's the most important. Maybe as you get older, you think so much more about that legacy. And I think of all the people who have gone before me or have gone before you, and what they have decided was important to them. And by and large, almost every single time, it was to leave the world a better place than they had found it. And in that, we have been so successful that we have changed ourselves from a city that was known for, well, not too admirable lifestyles sometimes, and many places that were not especially conducive to proper socialization, to put it nicely. But always, it was always the legacy. When I started teaching, there were 17 schools in Revere, and they were all in terrible shape. Some of you have gone to one of these schools at some time. Others of you, and in the audience, have been fortunate enough to go to the newer schools, the ones that were built in view of a legacy. There is only the future. May you all live as long as I've been able to. But even if you live longer, what you will remember, even in your old age, is what you have done for the folks who came behind you. Not how you profited on something, not how you skimped, but how generous in a financial sense and in a social and heartfelt sense. Thinking, I respect the man who preceded me, I understand. But we need to figure, how are we going to become a city? I don't want a reputation again of a city that doesn't much care about anything but people having a good time. We now lead the way throughout the state. We are known as leaders. I have 3 people here sitting beside me, the mayor, the superintendent, and the vice chair of the school committee, all 3 of whom lead their organizations, their statewide organizations, and Revere is there. That would not have happened. And I say that if we do not continue to progress, if we do not continue to look to the future, we will go back to the bad old days where somebody said to me, "Where do you teach?" And I said, "Revere." "Where do you live?" "I live in Revere." "Oh, you live in Revere, and oh, you teach in Revere? How are the kids? Are they terrible?" No, of course not. They're wonderful. You're graduates yourselves here. graduates in the audience. It is the future that we count on. I understand that people object to spending money, of course. I mean, who wants to pay? But we have now a confluence of the right people, the right time, and the right place. And the right place is Wonderland. We have it now. Putting the high school in the small area behind the current high school would be a god-awful experience for the kids in the Rumney and the current high school as the construction is going on. Where are we going to put all the elementary school kids? Where are they going to go by the time they get into high school? And then the generation after that. When are your grandchildren going to be able to go there? We need to think about the future. We need to look at that. I'm not saying that, that anybody is blindsided. I understand two aspects of the case. When we are struggling to what we can do and what we can accomplish during our lifetime. But it's what we can accomplish during our lifetime that really matters. That's what really matters. That's how we all will be remembered. We all tell stories in our own family about who sacrificed for us, and we were the beneficiaries of that. And then it is our duty as public citizens that we sacrifice in a public way for the children who follow us, because they deserve it. I've been through basic education in unsatisfactory places, and it's embarrassing. It's really embarrassing. So I say to you, think about what legacy you're going to leave. Are you going to leave one of optimism? One that says that we are confident in the future? One that says that we can keep going? Or are we going to say, oh, well, we can't do it now. We'll let the next generation do it. We can't. The generation who is here now has to do it. We have to be the ones who say, yes, we'll leave the place better than we found it. Because that is what we do. That is the way civilization from the beginning of time has improved, has made progress, has given us what it had. So let us give to the generation that follows us the same generosity of spirit, time, and money that we had given to us. I say blessings on you in your decision. I know it is difficult, but think about your legacy and ours to all those children who count on us, born and unborn, in the future. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Thacker. Is there anyone else that wishes to speak?
John Stamatopoulos, 15 School Street, and I'm sorry, I wish I spoke before Ms. Thacker. She really should have been the finale, but I had no intention of coming tonight. I started to listen on YouTube, and I heard someone speak about potentially not having an accreditation, and I felt that I had to drive right here. I've been a resident of this town about 15 years, built my home on School Street behind Immaculate, and I had no intentions of ever sending my kids to Revere schools when I first came to this town. I was going to have Catholic school kids, and my wife was the champion for Revere Public Schools, and we were fortunate enough to have our children all go through Paul Revere, which I think was world-class. And Ms. Ty spoke a lot about legacy, and I think 10, 15 years ago, Dr. Dakin started to put that in place for us to have world-class schools, and we had a new Paul Revere and a new SBA and a Rumney Marsh Academy, and I've been an incredible champion of Revere schools since then, been on the board at the Paul Revere for 7 years, involved with the Garfield, have coached on most fields in this town, and I'm proud that my kids are members of the Revere school system. And I've been proud of that until we're at the high school now. It was the first time I've started to have some reservations. And my youngest may never step foot in the new high school, but I believe it's what's best for this town. I believe if we want to continue to attract families to this community. I know we're the fastest growing town in the Commonwealth last year, and 6 years ago, I think we were the #1 urban high school in the country. And to go from that to possibly not having an accreditation just blows my mind. I think there's the opportunity to really build a world-class school there, that will propel students beyond what they're doing today to go on to secondary education. And we're having very success bringing in life science and other businesses into the community finally. And you'll start to attract people of skilled labor that will buy homes and build and set roots in this community. And they're not going to come here if we don't have a school that will provide the right education to their families. And as far as location, do I think Wonderland's great? Probably not, but we don't have a lot of options. I don't really care where you put it. I just think you should put it somewhere as fast as you can. And if I have to fund that through an increase in my taxes, I can't speak for everybody. I know not everybody has the means, but I'm willing to pay the increase. I think we should build it as fast as you can. And I'm speaking as a resident whose kids will never step foot in that building. But I think it's what's best for this community. So thank you for your time and attention.
Thank you. Any other comments? Hearing is going once? Going twice? Mr. Mayor, you have the podium.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you to the members who are here this evening. Just a quick overview for tonight, for the boring part of the meeting. We're gonna have a schematic design budget update that will be presented by Left Field. Brian Dakin will be presenting that. Actually, I'll give this to the city clerk. I will go over an update on the city's financing plan. What you have before you is a memo that Chief Financial Officer Rich Fiskay put together. Unfortunately, he is on vacation. I think you all knew that he would be on vacation, but I want to give a 30,000-foot level kind of overview on our financing plan. And then we'll go into a schedule update and have any questions or follow-up. So I will pass it off to Brian.
Okay.
Does everyone on the council have one of the handouts to be, y'all?
Yep.
Anybody else want someone? Thank you, councilors. Brian Dakin, 1 High Street, Left Field. Wanted to just start with the first slide update, and I think we're gonna try to get these on the screen as well. So, as Mayor Rego just noted, we're just gonna go through where the final design budget for schematic design landed, and then the Mayor's gonna take over for a little bit, and I'm gonna come back and go through the rest of the slides. So, next slide, please. You've seen a lot of numbers, and trust me, we've all seen a lot of numbers working on this, but after the last few months, I'm gonna say we've landed the schematic design budget at a $470.6 million total project budget. We're projecting a $180.4 million MSBA grant, which makes the effective reimbursement percentage 38.34 and brings the total cost to Revere to $290.2 million. Over a year ago, when the Wonderland site was selected, we were at about a 230.5 local share. And that initial budget that everyone saw in December, the $500 million, the notorious budget, included a $338.6 million share. So we've gone through a few of these first few bullet points at one of the last meetings. How did we get from the 499.9 to 470.6 with a 290 local share? Most of that's sort of old news, except the bottom bullet point. Last week, the building committee met and went through a number of ideas, value management ideas, were more or less ways to, different ways to build the mousetrap to get the same end result. We did not dig into cutting program for the school. Everything that was planned to be in there from a programmatic and educational perspective is still there. All the sustainability goals are still being met. But $7.5 million worth of scope was refined out of these numbers to help us get to the $470 million total project budget and $290.2. local share. I think I'm going to pause for a little bit there, and the mayor is going to go through some more finances. We'll come back and run through the rest of the slides and the schedule and questions.
Thank you, Brian. So I presented all of you with a memo from Rich Viscay. I'll say this, at the outset of this conversation around financing, we had a number of options that were placed on the table. And we certainly heard loud and clear that the council was not enthusiastic about some of those options that were presented at the time. And so, as we've been going through this process and as we've updated the cost of the school and tried to manage that as much as we could, we started the process of kind of putting together this financial plan. And we had talked about the high school stabilization fund, and the city council approved that, the creation of the trust fund. And so what we're proposing is that we would be generating revenue from into that stabilization fund from the following sources. And for you to look at your memo, I'm looking at the financial plan number 1, which it says establish policies for funding the stabilization fund. We would essentially be taking these existing sources, so 30% of certified free cash. As all of you know, we generate on average about $4 to $5 million a year in free cash. And as I think many of you know, we have statutory obligations to deposit certain amounts of that into our stabilization fund, into our general fund, stabilization fund. That's our rainy day account, which is at the highest level that it's ever been. What we're proposing is to take 30% of the certified free cash going forward over the next several years and put that into the high school stabilization fund. We're also proposing that 50% of all building permit fees that are generated by Suffolk Downs would be going into that high school stabilization fund. 50% of the tax foreclosure auction funds that come in. So many of you know that unfortunately, when folks are in foreclosure and unable to pay their bills, the city has the opportunity to take over property, and we have public auctions. And so what we'd be proposing is those funds usually drop down to our bottom line. We would, as we have auctions and as foreclosures may happen in the community, we would take 50% of those auction funds. I know that many of you know about this fund. It's called ETP. It's the Educational Technology Program Fund. That money is generated by the agreements that the city has with our cable providers. And so our cable providers assess a fee on every cable subscriber's bill. That money, a portion of that money comes back to the city. Currently, I believe there is in excess of $1 million in our Educational and Technology Program Fund, and that generates generally $300,000 to $400,000 a year. And finally, we'd be proposing that 50% of all Community Investment Trust Fund revenue be deposited into the High School Stabilization Fund. The CIT funding, as many of you know, many of the ward councils know, I'm sure, that when new development's happening in our city, on top of permit fees and other fees that a developer is required to make, there is this Community Investment Trust Fund that has been created. So we'd be looking at taking 50% of that money that's generated and directing it to the High School Stabilization Fund. There are a couple of sources of funding that we thought were important to call out, but don't factor into the actual kind of gap filling that we would be looking to do. And that's any potential gaming revenue or any potential cannabis excise tax revenue. Those, again, are two pieces that we know may be coming, but nothing that we can plan on, and something that, I think is important for us to at least acknowledge. The other part of the financial plan that we have here is that I would want to create a long-range financial planning committee. This is something we can talk about this and plan for this, but in reality, we're talking about 5, 6, 7 years from now, and we need to make sure that we have people watching and ensuring that the things that we're planning for and we're projecting actually happen. And so you can see we've added a number of people that would be part of that, and this would really be a task force that would be in charge of making sure that we're hitting all these markers that we've set. The last piece of it is that, as I said, we've heard loud and clear that some of the initiatives that we put forward were not all that well received, and what we have to do is work collaboratively to make sure that our spending it falls in line. And so this plan works if we are able to commit to capping spending in certain areas of general government, public safety, schools, public works, health and human services, and cultural and recreational spending. Those spending limits, I will say, will not be popular, but they're things that we have control over. You'll notice that health insurance isn't included in that. The debt payments obviously are not included in that, and our pension obligation is not included in that because those are fixed costs that we can't control. These are the costs that we can control, and if we can control these at this level, the Chief Financial Officer and I are confident that we can make this high school work. So if you look at the revenue that would be generated in the out years, so we talked about this before. The debt payments don't really start hitting in earnest until 2028. Will be $17 million in debt. The run up to that, so the estimated new debt that would be coming on board as part of the new high school will ramp up over, between 2024 and really 2029. So that's the focus area that we've wanted to talk about, and I know that the Chief Financial Officer has talked about the fact that there are other obligations that we have, especially pension obligations that will fall off in later years, and that these are the years that we really have to focus on and make sure that we have really a healthy Revere High School Stabilization Fund that can help blunt the cost of those debt payments that would be coming on board. So as we go through those years, you see the amounts of money that would be generated in the Revere High School Stabilization Fund. And that last graph that you have with you is a real high-level snapshot. And I preface this by saying that obviously Chief Financial Officer Visquet will get into much more excruciating detail if you'd like, but really high level. Between 2024 and 2029, you see our revenue and expenses and the projected gaps that have been created, including the debt payments that we'd have with the high school and the proposed use of stabilization funds for the high school to dull the payment of those of the bonds from associated with the high school. So I know there's probably going to be a million questions, and they may not even all come tonight, but we wanted to present this to you at a pretty high level, talk about if anyone has any thoughts, opinions, comments that we think would be helpful. We're more than willing to have those conversations. Again, this is a draft, but I think all of you wanted to hear and have been waiting to hear how we make this work, and here's a little bit of us showing our work. And as I said, Chief Financial Officer will be ready at next Monday's meeting to really dive into the details, but happy to get any initial thoughts that people have or answer any questions that anyone may have. Thank you.
If the council, does the council have any questions for the mayor at this time? Council Maravito. We'll start off with people on the committee.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Yes.
It's a first.
It's a first for everything.
So taking into your percentages, if we were to calculate this for fiscal year 2023 that we're in, what is the final savings or like the final disbursement that would go toward the school? Say, for instance, if we calculated all your percentages for this fiscal year, what do we have as far as a dollar value?
So I don't have those in front of me, but I would say, I know off the top of my head, we have, I believe, $6 million in free cash that has been certified. And don't quote me to these numbers, but I think these are kind of high level, but around $6 million in free cash. So, 30% of that would be greater than the 1.3, right? So as we were projecting out in the next fiscal years, we were looking at what our history has been, right? So we've generally had about, like I said, $4 to $5 million in free cash a year. This year is going to be a little bit better of a year, but we know that every year we have free cash, right? And so the point is that for these unbudgeted, truly unbudgeted pots of money that we have, that we could divert them to the high school stabilization fund. That would be very good. So Suffolk Downs building permits, I can tell you that as of today, right now, they've paid nearly $3 million in building permit fees, and that's only for one building and one foundation of another building. So if you think about the project, that project is scheduled to have 4 buildings completed by 2025. And so they've only built, as I said, one, and they have one in the ground, or one foundation permit that's been pulled. So those amounts that we project out for building permit fees are conservative to the lower. The educational technology programming funds, as I said, I know there's right now there's over $1 million in that account, but we know that there's $300,000 that's generated every year. We would be taking, we'd be looking to take half of that. So, these are, again, assuming 2024, we could, if we wanted to, as a community and as a council and as a mayor, work together, we could say, we can start doing this in 2023. That'll only create more revenue front end to help us out, so.
No, I appreciate it, and I think it's best if we all work on it together as a council and with your team as well. But I think just putting that information out there, how a structure of how we can pay for this, and just within a minute, you gave us about $3 million. So I think, and you don't even, and everything's going to be forecasted. So based on previous years. So yeah, I'd like to see these numbers more.
Yeah, and we're prepared to be able to provide everybody with much more detail, and if you have specific things that you want to see, like the actual building permit fees that have come in for Suffolk Downs, or the projected fees, we're happy to be able to do our best to provide all that information, just to show further our work. I think I wanted to at least have that high level presentation of where we are and what we can do. And hearing the feedback from the council has been really helpful. And knowing that there are certain things that are just off the table. And, we thought we would put everything up there, out to everyone and say, hey, let's think about all these options and all these potential solutions. But I think what we have here is something that is minimally impactful to the taxpayer, and something that is a plan that I hope everybody can get behind.
No, I agree, and I'm appreciative of this because it kind of gives us an idea of what avenue you're looking to save, and not save, but like structure payments, so down the road, a pathway to payment. So one of us may look at one of these items and be like, oh, you know what? I didn't see this line item, or maybe we can take 30% of this or this fee that the city generates. So
Yep.
I think this will be very helpful to give us all ideas of what we can and can't do, because obviously some things are state mandated and you can't touch the money, or as you mentioned earlier. So yeah, I look forward to getting some estimates.
Yeah, and I think the most important thing, I hope the takeaway is that, we're not, as some fear mongering has been done throughout this process, we're not looking to cut people's jobs. We're not looking to go for a debt exclusion. We're not looking to do things, nickel and dime people with additional fees or things like that. Those are all things that we have to talk about. We have to have adult conversations and say, hey, if we're gonna make the high school a priority, and we're gonna really, as Ms. Chai said, kind of think about our legacies as public servants. We need to have really thoughtful and honest conversations about how we can do this. And this is not a plan that is proposing to cut jobs or do anything that would really impact the taxpayer.
One more question. So say, for instance, if we had a debt exclusion, which is basically similar to the same thing as an override, correct?
Correct, yeah.
So if we were going to raise residents' taxes, that would be a vote that the people of Revere would be voting on it. So they would be voting on, and I think that's very, very important, because there are flyers going out. Like my father's getting in the 80s range, and he's just doesn't do the research. He's old school Italian. He has, and he came to me and he's like, what is this? They're going to build a new school? What are they? They always want to take my money. They always want to take my money. What is this? And I'm like, Dad, did you look into it? So I had to go for a 45 minutes, I had to have a one-on-one conversation with him and explain it. I said, at the end of the day, if we have to get a override, you, the voters, would actually have your say, and you would be voting on whether we can raise your taxes based on the school. So I think it's very important that we put out that message.
And that what we're proposing is to not do that, right? And I think that's been the goal that we've all been working to collectively, is to come up with a financial plan that does not require an override or any kind of debt exclusion.
Thank you. Council Powers?
Thank you, Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I don't think it's any secret out there that I'm also in favor of building a new high school. A high school that meets the standards 20, 30, 40, 50 years from now. Something that we don't have to start all over again. What troubles me is then, when the longer we let this thing linger, we could lose our accreditation, okay? And you talk about cost of a high school. I have 4 family members who own property in the city, and they're concerned. They ask me the same questions. My children ask me those questions. And I try to explain it to them as best I know and can. Let's look at the Wonderland site. Probably not the best site in the city for a high school. My feeling is a high school should be centrally located. And, you know, we've got a lot of traffic down there. The woman who spoke earlier here on, I believe, East Mountain Avenue, I did represent that area a couple of years ago, and she's 100% right. To build a high school down there would only be giving the people more of what they've already had, another dose of bad medicine. And that should not happen. You know, 30 years ago in this city, as Ms. Ty pointed out, we had 17 schools. And I don't even think that included the center school, I'm not sure. But, and the city fathers back then said, well, you know, we've got too many schools, there are not that many kids going to the schools. So they sold the schools. And who do they sell them to? I'll give you an idea. The Walcott, the Liberty, the Barrows, and others. They sold them. And who did they sell them to? They sold them to developers. And what did the developers do? They come in and built more housing. So all of a sudden, 5 or 10 years later, we needed that space back again in the schools. So what do we have to do? We had to go back and build a few more schools, okay? I think we have probably one of the best school systems in the Commonwealth right now in this city. And perhaps that's why people are moving to the city and paying $2,500, $3,000, $3,500 a month for rent, because we have something to offer in this city. And I think that, you know, the longer we wait, okay, I'll give you a perfect example. August 2019, we bonded the city council $9.2 million to build Point of Pines Fire Station. And that's coming online very soon. We'll be in the ground probably. I heard news today, well, within a month, 2 months. Okay? So today, when we got, well, not today, but a couple of weeks ago, when we got the bids back, the bids were $12.2 million, a $3 million increase. So I have to sit and actually frighten myself when I think of a school costing hundreds of $millions. How much will that increase over the next few years? And if we lose our accreditation, then we're going to wait longer. And it's just going to be a downhill battle. I say that we have to take the bull by the horns, so to speak. Get the best possible school we can that is going to be adequate 20, 30, 40, 50 years from now. Okay? Get it for the right price. Don't eliminate something because, well, we don't need it now because we may need it, you know, back in the future. So I am supporting this high school. I want to make everybody aware of that. I'm not running away from it. It's going to cost money, no question about it. But I think it's a damn good investment, and I don't think we can wait any longer. Thank you.
Thank you. Any question? Am I missing some? Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, yeah, go right ahead.
I'm not in the committee, I was just waiting my turn.
Yeah, nobody else on the committee that is, okay, Councilor Cogliano.
I have a few questions, and I know Mr. Dakin is going to go through this more, and I don't know if we should wait.
Well, if it's for Mr. Dakin,
So I just want to be clear, this is without, and Mr. Mayor, thank you for your presentation today. I sincerely appreciate this. This is a plan to not have a debt exclusion.
Correct.
Or Prop 2.5 over.
Correct.
I just want to be clear on that. Okay. And then I'll wait till Mr. Dakin is done with his presentation.
great.
Thank you.
Thank you. You want to go down this line? If you don't, whatever is easier? Huh? Ken? Okay, we'll go, well, you're last. You don't mind? Okay, great. All right, we'll start off with Council Rizzo.
Thank you very much. And thank you, Mr. Mayor, for being here to answer some questions. Just so you know, and I'm not even sure if you were at that meeting, it was a couple weeks ago when the Director of Finance was here. He was the one that laid out some of these options. In fact, he said that without adopting some of these options, he wasn't sure how we could go forward without an override or a debt exclusion. He talked about full-time employment layoffs, he talked about trash fees, he talked about increasing in fines and permits and stuff like that. So, those things were on the table. I'm glad to hear that they're off the table now. That is encouraging. But for me, and also, Mr. Chairman, before I go on, it's always great to hear from people that come. They clearly care about the high school, as we all do. All of us here, it's not a matter of not wanting a new high school. That's not the issue with this city council. In fact, some of us here on the city council, when you kids, I heard a couple that graduated in 2017, probably right around the time you were born, we were voting on an $85 million school building project that provided the Rumney Marsh School, that provided the New Wayland and Susan B. and so on. So we were, the Paul Revere, we were 100% in favor. This decision, for me anyway, it's twofold. First and foremost, I just cannot see the location being at Wonderland. There's a number of reasons. I'm not going to rehash that. Other people want to speak. But notwithstanding the fact that I wasn't on the building committee and wasn't at the meetings, we're here now. And it was encouraging to hear from Brian Dakin, I think it was last week or the week before, when he said it's not set in stone. In fact, I think it was you, Mr. Chairman, that asked him to go back and look at the existing site. There are huge ramifications for this city building at Wonderland. I mean, I know we all want a brand-new school, especially those that have kids that are eventually going to go there. But the ramifications for the city that we have to deal with up here on the city council is what happens if we do that? What happens if we go forward and we approve this project for Wonderland? Wonderland right now, and you might have heard some people say, well, nothing's been there, as if something will never go there. That is just simply not true. There are things that the city can do, and I'm sure the mayor knows this. We can work in partnership with the owners of the site. We can talk about putting out some sort of RFQ in conjunction with them that could, maybe what does the city want to see there and what does the developer want to see there? There's tax incentives we can talk about. I truly believe that we can generate enough revenue from that site long-term that we can fund this new high school so that what we make from Suffolk Downs can go back to the general public in the community, can go back to potential tax relief, can go back to increase in how many roads and sidewalks we can, that we can get done. These are good projects, and they will generate, at least we think, we hope that they're gonna generate some significant revenue. But the revenue they're talking about right now at Suffolk Downs is $46 million at full build-out, and Suffolk Downs is not that much bigger a site than Wonderland is. Now, there might be some, maybe not as much usable space, you could argue that, but if you cut it in half, cut it in a third, cut it however you want, but that is really giving up a lot for the city. It's not just coming up with what we need right now to fund this, because I am not afraid to fund a new high school. Far from it. If the numbers work, I am going to vote for it. Not sure that I can vote for it financially where this site is currently being proposed. It's not just funding it down there, but it's the loss of revenue. And, there's just no way that I can get by that. If we revisit the existing site, like other cities and towns have done, there are several other cities and towns that have built on existing sites. And, they build them third. That's how they do it. You know, it's been done, and it's been done successfully in very, very good school districts. Somebody had mentioned earlier that, you know, we were the best high school as rated by NCUST, the National Center for Urban School Transformation. That was in 2014. I mean, we have some great teachers. And while it might not be optimal right now in the classrooms, I have full confidence that our teachers can give our kids a great education while we figure out how we're going to pay for a brand-new first-class facility. We all want this. There is no gain for me to stand in the way of the construction of a new school. There's zero gain for me as a resident here. My business is here. I mean, I want to see good things happen in this city. I'm not a cheerleader against it. But I feel as though my job here as a city councilor, we have to look at everything when it comes to a project, especially a public project like this. We've got multiple balls in the air right now. We've got a new, Councilor Powers alluded to, new fire station we're paying for. We're paying for a new DPW facility. That, you know, and we haven't even talked yet about, I know there's been talk about the need, and if it's a need, well, how do we find the money to renovate the existing high school while we're spending all this money on a new high school at a location that will no longer allow us to generate revenues? There's just many different things that I have a real problem with. And as easy it would be, believe me, it would be easier for me to sit here, ask for your applause. Yes, great, Councilor Rizzo, you're for us, let's go do it. But I wouldn't be doing my job. I would not be doing my job, and not just not doing my job for the, you know, for the people that are on, like Mr. Gucciardi, who spoke earlier, who talked about he's on a fixed income and all that. Not just doing my job for him. I wouldn't be doing my job for you, those of you that have children in this school system. I would not be doing my job if I knowingly, knowing what I know with respect to the finances, vote this going forward, and then you that want to stay here in this community, you want to stay invested here, you want to send your kids to the Revere Public Schools, and now you find yourself in a situation where, wow, how do I afford this? You know, will be leaving us with virtually no bonding capacity in the event of emergency, and emergencies do arise. So these are all things that are swirling in my head, Mr. Chairman. I know other people want to speak, but you know, those are my sticking points, Mr. Chairman, and I just want to let them be known. You know, again, I'm not an obstructionist. This is not something that I am happy to have to talk about right now. So, you know, a new high school to me would be great. But let's do it the right way, let's do it at the right place, and let's do it with a secure funding source. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Councilor Serena?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Through you to the mayor.
Yeah.
Thank you for this financial planning document. Just some feedback. As a ward councilor, the first thing that stuck out to me was the Community Investment Trust Fund.
I already got a text from Ira.
So, you know, and I want to echo, when developments come into the city, that's really all, you know, that our neighborhoods, our residents get back when their quality of life is impacted by, you know, apartment buildings and these giant developments that come into, you know, onto Washington Ave or Salem Street or whatnot. So diverting money that is essentially promised to kind of mitigate some of those issues, sidewalks, traffic concerns, that's, you know, that's a bit concerning to me. One of the questions that I had, you know, I'm not sure how to phrase this, but have we looked at options of trying to reach out to companies like Amazon, like HYM, like Redgate, like Gate Residential, all of these developers that are doing business in our city that come before us when they're seeking, you know, their approval for their development, saying how invested they are in the city and how much they love the city, and, you know, what are they, beyond what they're already giving for tax revenue. I feel that these larger businesses, these larger development, you know, even Overlook Ridge, whatnot, I feel that they all have a responsibility, especially actually Overlook Ridge, which has kids coming out of that development into the school system. So have we thought of approaching these, larger businesses and whatnot to seek revenue donations, in-kind, not in-kind contributions, but contributions toward the building and funding the new high school?
So short answer, yes. I'll say that part of the logic behind the CIT funds and tapping those CIT funds is just that, right? The developers that come into the city, they pay permit fees, they pay other fees associated with building, but when they're doing something that's not by right, they do have to pay into this Community Investment Trust Fund. And we know that there will be, more funding that will be coming through that in the future, because we're not gonna, look to prevent anybody who wants to come and invest in the community to invest in the community. So I guess I would say that the logic behind the CIT funds and tapping those CIT funds is just that, to be able to direct money that developers are putting in to the city, to the high school directly would be important. But, in terms of how we could possibly open up discussions with other folks, I know that there may be some challenges with that, but we're trying to look at everything that we have control over to be able to say we can fund this without an override, without really kind of creating chaos in our finances. And the CIT funds are one of those where you look to the developer community to try to have them do their part, and that's part of this. And the other thing that I'd say is this is right now. And this is a plan that would allow us in the current environment that we have to be able to fund the high school. That there's nothing to say that CIT funds and the ordinance that surround, that the underlying ordinance of the CIT funding stream should be looked at. And that's more collaborative work that we could do and, potentially get ahead of and be able to have those developers kind of do a little bit more than what they're currently doing. So definitely would love to kind of identify that and see if there are more that we could do, or if there's any more that we could do.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I actually do have a question for Dr. Kelly, if that's, may I, or?
Go ahead.
Because there's been a lot of talk tonight about, the possibility of the high school losing accreditation if we don't act now, and a lot of discussion around accreditation in general. And I can recall, and obviously I'm not on the school committee, I'm not super in tune with school issues, but either right before COVID or right around COVID, I believe the school department, if I'm not mistaken, either eliminated the honors program or changed the grading system or did something with around that. And I believe, because I remember people leaving Revere High and actually going to my alma mater, to MC, and pulling their kids out of Revere Public because of actually essentially the fear of how it would impact their children when they were applying to colleges. So could you speak to that and about how many students, or how, if that was a hot button issue, and how many families we lost during that time for those issues?
So that's a little bit hard to tell. We know that during COVID, a lot of families moved to private schools that were actually remaining open when we were still doing remote learning. So we definitely lost some families in that. We've actually seen a number of them come back since. The grading piece is entirely different. And what we did was went to a mastery-based grading system where kids are graded based on what they know and the knowledge they demonstrate. I could talk for hours about this, but to try to be very brief, what often happens in traditional educational environments is kids are identified around 3rd or 4th grade as whether or not they are honors worthy or not. And what we see in the research is that once that determination is made, those kids persist in that track right through their high school career. And that there are a lot of kids who, on subsequent testing, like we have kids every year who score above proficient on MCAS, but because they haven't been on the honors track, they're precluded from taking those courses as they get to high school and proceeding past there. So what we tried to do is try to eliminate those barriers and make honors coursework available to all students. And so we are in more of an unleveled environment where every kid is presented the advanced coursework to try whenever they feel it's appropriate for them and to take it. And I can tell you that one of our ratings from the state in our accountability level is the percentage of kids who do complete advanced coursework. And with advanced coursework, they consider, for example, high-level courses like calculus, dual enrollment classes where the kids are taking college-level classes but getting high school credit as well, early college classes, which is similar, but it's a specific designation, and other programs like that. And we have closed the gap. First of all, our overall percentage has gone up by almost 20%. The percentage of our previous majority population in those classes was white students, and that's actually gone up from 83% to 84% completing. But the really telling information is that the gap in our English language learners has been cut in half. The percentage of our Hispanic students taking those classes has doubled. The percentage of our special needs students hasn't closed as much, but we did close that gap by 10%. It's still only about 40% of kids who are doing those kinds of classes. And when you think about the kids that are in your inclusion classes that you see in a traditional learning environment that you wouldn't even know they had an IEP, those are the kids that I'm talking about. We still need to do some work to close that gap. But I think that we've made a huge amount of progress in the few years since we implemented our mastery-based learning program and closing those gaps. I can get that data for you if you want. I shared it with the school committee a couple of months ago. Okay.
You all set, Counsel? Okay. Counsel Silvestri.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I really don't have a question for anybody, just kind of a statement. I got to say, my head is spinning from the many Ways and Means Committee that we've been sitting up here. And I'm not saying that this is going to be a slam dunk or an easy process, or I'm not saying that we should just build it and worry about how we pay for it. But as a body, we need to make a decision. We're going backwards in this process. This process has been going on for 3 years. We've been sitting up here now almost 2 years and talking about how we're going to do this and talking about going back to other sites. And it's kind of crazy to me. We got to make a decision on this. And if it's no, it's no. But we need to make it as a body and come up with one. And that's it, because the further we delay, it's only going to get more expensive, and it's only going to cost the people more. Going back to the other site, we know we're not saving any money. I know no one wants to hear it, but taking the tax rolls, taking the Wonderland site off the tax rolls, Wonderland hasn't been on the tax rolls since I've been in high school. So, as a body, we need to make a decision, and we really need to, we can have them come up every week and show us how we're going to do it or how we can't do it, and we can have Rich Fiscate come up here, our CFO, and give us 900 ideas on what we can do, and we can always say no. But at some point, we need to make a decision, and we need to do it in a timely manner. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Counsel. Councilor Zambudo.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Where do I begin here? Let's start with the fact that I certainly want a high school, okay? I was up here, I built 5 schools, and I built, not only did I build them, I was invested in them. I spent my personal time overseeing the construction of the first 2 schools. Now, I don't want to go into all of that stuff, but the people who know that I saved a lot of things from going wrong because of my construction experience. And we had professionals that were overseeing these projects. And just one example is they started to put finishes on without climate control. I said that for the people that know how foolish that is. But that's what I did. I'm invested in this community. I'm invested in a new high school. But I'm also invested in not putting the city into a receivership. Now, this plan tonight at least is a hope of how it might be paid for. I said when I had my 6-month hiatus from this council, I came up here and spoke before this council and said, we're about to make the biggest fiscal mistake in the history of the city, and that was to take a piece of property off the tax roll to build a high school. And I said, now, we all know that Suffolk Downs, probably the best development the city will ever have, is going to produce $47 million a year in tax revenue. And I said, well, it's the same size, roughly, as Suffolk Downs, but let's say it's worth half as much. Half as much is about $22 million a year, and over the duration of the high school, 50 years, that's $1 billion off the tax roll. I know we can hear that nothing's been on that site, and the property is still valuable. The property could still contribute to paying this enormous bond, probably $25 million debt service a year for the new high school. Now, I said I'm for a high school. I want to see how we can pay for it. I'm not for it at Wonderland. I still believe it was the biggest fiscal mistake, and if we can go back to the original site, that's the way to do it. The bottom line is, Mr. Mayor, you gave a lot of reasons where we couldn't. I've been telling people for years that Suffolk Downs was going to lower the tax rate, like we all were telling people when it was up for a proposal. Suffolk Downs was going to give us $47 million a year. We wouldn't be raising taxes. How much of Suffolk Downs' revenue are we going to have to use to pay for the high school?
So the proposal you have before you is only diverting the building permit fees, right? So not
I can read that. I understand
none of the
that.
42 million or 47 million that's going to be generated every year, and hence why, and when we get into details of the out years, right? So as we get into fiscal years 35 and 40 and 45, the city's at a generous surplus because of the fact that we will have that revenue coming in. And so I understand, the concern that you may have, Counselor, but I'll say this about Wonderland. If we were to get into a time machine, and I know some of us would like to do that, and I could go back to the first day in office, and I could bet my life savings on what would be developed first, Suffolk Downs or Wonderland, I would have said Wonderland. John knows, Council Powers knows, that was our focus. Clean up the site. 25,000, 30,000 people a day drive by that site. Clean up the site, get it developed. And time again, absolutely.
Blue line coming in and out, and the commuter rail soon to happen down there within the next decade.
Absolutely. And so that site was, was our number one site to try to provide tax revenue for the city. Time and time again, we had folks that would come through and either because the city council wanted a moratorium or wanted to shut down.
I think this is my time, Mr. Chairman. I think we're going on.
I'm explaining Wonderland. We want to talk about Wonderland. I'm happy to explain.
Yeah.
I know the details of the negotiations, and I've worked with the ownership to try to get that developed. There was an RFP put out. We had the best broker in commercial real estate in the Commonwealth and really in the Northeast region. And Councilor Sylvester knows this. The best commercial broker. This is pre-pandemic. The best thing they could come back with was a 150,000 square foot Amazon facility, which we said absolutely not. Not going to happen. We're not going to let that happen.
Yeah.
And so when we talk about Wonderland, yeah, we've done this dance for as Councilor Sylvester said, 20 years. I remember working there as a young man with Steve Penta, one of our DPW employees. Worked there as a lead out. It was going to be the place where we knew we could generate revenue. It hasn't happened.
Yeah, well,
it hasn't happened, and so
that doesn't mean it won't happen.
to rehash.
When you take a piece of property off the tax roll, you kill it. It's dead forever. There's no chance. You have no funding source. You're coming up with what is a hope and a prayer here, and a lot of it might work and a lot of it might not work, and we'll see. But the bottom line is, when you take a piece of property off the tax roll, it's off the tax roll, period. Now, whether it's going to create 20 million a year or 15 million a year, whatever it creates could pay a big portion of the debt service for the new high school. Without it on the tax roll, it pays zero, period. So it may be an emotional argument that we'll never get anything on that site. That's not true. That's not true. And because an RFP went out and the only thing that came back was a $120 million Amazon facility, doesn't mean that's always what it can produce. But the bottom line is, it's a piece of property that could stay on the tax roll and help pay the bond, help pay the debt service, and not have to have seniors worried about being homeless because of their taxes going up. And so you're telling me zero tax dollars from Suffolk Downs are going to go to pay this debt service?
I'm telling you that we're not going to need an override, that the tax revenue that gets generated by Suffolk Downs is going to be part of the operating costs of the city. The operating costs of the city, as you see in our financial plan, and the spending that we're presenting is no more than 3 or 4%. As the revenue gets generated by Suffolk Downs, we're not looking to use any funds other than the permitting fee that comes through. And so the only hope and prayer that I've heard tonight is that Wonderland's going to magically become a commercial generating property.
That's not the answer
That's the
I was
only
looking
hope and
for.
prayer that I've heard. These are facts. These are numbers.
The other thing you said.
We've done our work. We do our homework.
The other thing you said was talking about cutting services. You talked about cutting services.
We proposed to this council a number of different items that we thought would be options.
Options
we
are cutting
thought
services,
we could work collaboratively,
cutting public
because
safety.
this is a priority. No, we're not talking about cutting public safety.
You said public safety. I wrote it down when you said it.
I said 4%, a 4% increase. We're gonna cap spending.
So you're going to
cap
public safety.
Correct. We're going to
Okay.
cap
All right.
our cap general government, public safety, school spending, public works.
Okay. Thank you for your presentation.
And we're not cutting, just to be clear, we're not cutting. We're capping the growth at 3 to 4%.
Yeah. When the population is going to be going way up. So the Democrats used to say that's a cut. So I guess.
Councilor, this is not a national political
No,
conversation.
what
At
I'm
the end of the
saying
day,
is-
we're
what
trying
I'm
to get the
saying
work
is a
done.
4%.
We're looking to work collaboratively with the city council. There have been
4%.
no ideas, zero ideas, Councilor. You have come up with
Zero
zero ideas.
Zero ideas?
Zero.
Arguing is not helping anybody.
I beg to differ with that.
Arguing is not helping
Thank
anybody.
you.
Let's control ourselves, please.
Yeah, well.
I understand we have Mr. Dakin coming up and to present some more information.
Sure, let's jump back into the slides if that's all right. And you can go, I think, 2 forward. There's a placeholder. Yep, next. So quick, I wanted to link the current schedule into a few requests that the council asked us to work on. This is a recap of the schedule we're attempting to hold. A lot of what you're going to hear me say in the next, hopefully, 5 minutes or so is related to time is money. This is something that Councilor Silvestri and Councilor Powers, I think, were referring to in their comments. But the project will be back at the meeting in 2 weeks, February 27th. The project will be requesting Ways and Means and Council approval to submit schematic design at the costs you've seen tonight to the MSBA. The team is ready. It'll take us the next few weeks to be ready, but we will be ready for a March 2nd submission to MSBA. If we get that submission in, that'll lead, MSBA does their work in March and April. Project attends some subcommittee meetings of the School Building Authority. And then that would all lead to April 26th, their board meeting, which out of that meeting, an approval would result in a project scope and budget agreement. And that project scope and budget agreement will come back at the same total project that we submit. Their grant value might vary depending on their opinion of the detailed finances. So that would that April 26th meeting would result in another meeting or a few meetings in May of the council to authorize execution of the project scope and budget agreement. All of that leads towards being able to start cleanup and pushing dirt around next spring, maybe into the summer, and holding an occupancy in summer 2027. Next slide, please. Now, why I wanted to stress that time is money is in the construction industry, as I explained, I hope I explained at the last meeting, we have to capture current costs and then we have to escalate them to when that construction's happening. So in the middle column is the total project budget that we are proposing, and we will be proposing that the council approve in 2 weeks, $470.6 million. Those upper numbers in construction are in today's value, but we're about 18 months away from buying them, or buying a lot of them. So that 9% in escalation represents those 18 months. What would happen if we even moved the project back and moved that borrowing back 2 months? What if we were to say this is going to take till April to work out? We're estimating, and with Consigli's help, your builder, 0.5% a month is minimally what we'd have to put on hard costs. So that more or less moves the 9% escalation out to 10%. Those numbers ripple into all of the CM indirect costs, which are the rolled up in the $83.4 million number. Long story short is, even pushing this back on paper 2 months has a $3 million impact, a $3 million negative impact for the same project. And I think when you hear us stress that time is money and moving forward is in your best interest financially, this is the phenomenon that really fuels that. But we're going to have some more examples of it in a second. Next slide, please. One of the other requests, and this was actually a great exercise, so I appreciate people asking for it to be on our radar, but so really comparison of, is this school, how in alignment is this school design, Revere High School, with the Northeast Metro Tech Vocational? So we spent some time on their website, talked to some folks. Thank you, Councilor Visconti, for helping out, making sure I was talking to the right people and getting the right numbers. All of the numbers on the right come from documents posted on their website from approved MSBA submissions. They're about 18 months ahead of us. So we're in schematic design. They're in 90% construction documents, which usually is right around when you're bidding a lot of scope, structure, steel, site work, et cetera. They are a 1,600 student facility. Revere High is proposed as a 2,450 student facility. The upper numbers are all the budgets. The budgets are going to vary with the square footage and with the student count. So I think there's not really a ton to talk about up top, but the bottom numbers here, I wanted to stress what the effective reimbursement rate phenomenon that happens on all MSBA projects. Our project is coming in at a 77, Revere's reimbursement rate with the incentive points that we're building in is 77.99. Metro Tech is 76.84. When you run the numbers based on our potential $180 million MSBA grant and their $140 MSBA grant against the budget, we're hitting a 38.34% effective reimbursement rate. They're seeing a similar drop from their 76 to 39.9. The square footages are listed there, and it calcs down to a square footage cost. So I thought, again, this was a good exercise to do. They're different projects. All projects are different, but they are quite close to each other in all financial metrics, which was a good sanity check for this project. I think this goes to speaking to that. I think we have a appropriate design. We don't have an excessive design. And I think if we did this exercise with a detailed exercise with every other high school project that was out there, with the exception of some with really some special site baggage, this is the realm that you're going to see all these projects in nowadays. Next slide, please. Another study that we were asked to look at was to return to the existing site. Now, I wanted to, what's on the screen is finances, but before I talk finances, I just want to remind the committee that there's significant risk in considering this from an MSBA perspective. As I told you at the last meeting, is MSBA just going to hear this idea and throw you out of the program? No. But to go back to an option that was previously eliminated would take time, and it would take convincing the MSBA that this was all happening for valid reasons. So there's an assumption here that MSBA could get on board and move forward with it. There's also a lot, I encourage people to go back to the presentations last winter. There were a lot of not quantitative reasons. There were a lot of qualitative reasons why this site was also eliminated. Some of them have been talked about tonight. But generally speaking, we'd still be talking about a 4-story building with a garage under it. The other major risk that we talked about this site that I want to reiterate before we just look at these numbers is, since Ericola Park is in fact a park, minimally, we would need to replace that parkland in a 1-to-1 area. If there's 1,000 square feet, you got to build 1,000 square feet after you knock the buildings down. We could only achieve a 1-to-1 ratio on that site. And that process, the Article 97 process that ultimately leads towards literally an act of the State House to approve moving a park, could yield a much greater ratio. It could go up to 2-to-1. It could be 1.5-to-1. If any of those happened, you couldn't fit it there. You wouldn't be able to proceed with the high school project until more land was secured where the additional park space would go. So could it fit in a 1-to-1 swap? Yes. If it gets really any bigger than 1-to-1 throughout that article process, it's not going to fit on that site, and that would have a problem. So when I say there's risk, there's MSBA risk here, and there's Article 97 risk. But I think the finances, again, when we talk escalation, speak for themselves. So we went back and took the last number that we put an estimate on the existing site, which was 2 Decembers ago, and we gave it the same scope and escalation sort of penalty, if you will, that the Wonderland option incurred in the last year. That was the surprise of going up to $500 million. It's a 25% increase, mainly driven by market costs, but also driven by understanding the garage and other items. So if we escalate that project up by 25%, and then we consider that we're losing a year, minimally we're losing a year, we'd have to repeat feasibility study, we'd have to repeat schematic design. That means instead of 18 months of escalation at 9%, we'd really be looking at an additional 12. So it would be 18 plus a year, which instead of 9% escalation, we'd be calculating as 15%. We're at 6% a year in escalation. Bottom line, that drives down towards, if we're looking at it from today, because we've lost time, because this is not the project that the team has been working on for over a year now, you're looking at a $64.3 million premium over the current Wonderland budget. You would also have to fund repeating the feasibility study. The $2 million the team has spent on the feasibility study, in effect, would be wasted. It would need to be reallocated. To me, it creates a valid financial delta of $66.3 million to go back to that existing site option. And this is really driven by time. Time will kill you very quickly in construction if things slip out into the future. Those were the main points we wanted to go through and the main, what we took away as the main requests of the council, but I'm sure there's going to be questions and I'll do my best to answer them.
Councilor Cogliandro.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Dakin, I'm going to continue to thank you every time you come up here. Thank you for all your hard work. Really quickly, I just want to say I agree with Councilor Silvestri. My head's spinning a little bit. We're doing a lot of arguing up here. It's counterproductive. We need to be setting an example for the people who are supposed to be trusting us. So if we could just start acting more like adults and stop arguing so much, I would really appreciate it. I just want to state something, that I am against the high school being the site of the new high school. The people there have already been through enough. They were just scared with eminent domain just a couple of years ago. And as a teacher who understands the distractions children already have, to be building on a site next to the school where kids are trying to be educated, that would be detrimental to their education, and I cannot be on board with the high school as a site. This is a side question, but it's listed here as a potential source of revenue. Does anybody have a timeline on the one marijuana license that we have in this city? Is it going to be built? If so, when, where? Any information would be great, because that would be a great source of revenue to help pay for this.
Unfortunately, I don't have a ton of information. We've heard from the developer that they were planning to be open, but I know there's some work that's been done down there, but I don't have any specific update. I will say the revenue that gets generated, isn't huge, and if you follow the news on that industry, it's kind of changed an awful lot, and I think that's playing into the fact that it's taken them so long. I also think there's some questions about the special permit, but I don't know how much of that revenue, and we kind of bookmarked it as something that could possibly come in, but that may be in the hundreds of thousands of dollars range, not, millions, so.
Right. Every little bit helps,
Definitely.
I guess. So last night, not last night, the last building committee meeting, I saw some line items, and I just wanted some clarification on the tennis courts, the soccer field, and specifically the tennis court lighting. Are those things that were voted off, or are they still on?
Tennis courts themselves are still in. The lighting was removed. That was a value engineering, it's an item that the building committee accepted to remove. It's worth about $1 million to light those tennis courts. All of the 2 fields remain in the project and remain as artificial turf fields without lighting. So the design has never included lighting for the athletic fields. It did for the tennis courts. Right now, it includes lights for none of them.
And just a little bit of clarification, I noticed that building the fields without irrigation seemed to be a higher cost than with irrigation.
Yeah, this is a lot of the I understand why people's heads spin, because you gotta, they're negative numbers. It's, the detractive value would be more. See, I'm even saying it backwards. The numbers are reversed, basically, because they're removing them from the project. And the only reason we had those items up there because we wanted to establish a value that if it was very important for the city to take that northern field and have it available for future development, the project would still need to clean it up. The project would still need to account for storm retention and drainage, and we can't do nothing over there. So we determined what the best thing that we could do is figure out what it would cost to just leave you a grass field. And if there were a project that was pending, let's say within a year or something, then we'd recommend don't even put irrigation there. If that field was gonna stay there and a project was gonna come to fruition in 3 or 4 years, we'd say put the irrigation in or it's gonna be brown next August, so. But the fields remain in the budget and scope.
Okay, I asked specifically about those because the fields, correct me if I'm wrong, it was, I think, somewhere around like 5 million or 2.5 million, or one of those numbers was for the field. So I didn't know if that was on the table to be removed or not, to help afford it. I also have some questions on the conservation end. I know this has been before the Concom. Where are we with that? Are they hiring a third party to do testing? Another question would be, are we going to be responsible for treating any of the water on that site? And because that's going to be an expense on us, to my understanding. So just a little clarification on that, please.
So the project has gone to an initial Concom hearing. Concom did recommend, due to the complexity of the site and the plan, request that a peer review happen. Thankfully, the feasibility budget had just barely enough money left in it to pay the $6,800 peer review fee. That fee is in the process of being transferred to Concom, and once that peer review's done, the project will be back in front of Concom, I think most likely in March. I'll have to follow up on water treatment. I think the answer is no, but I'll talk to some of the more environmental related professionals tomorrow and get a better answer on that.
And lastly, I just want to say that everything that was said in here tonight is valid. We do need to look to the future. We always want to think about leaving a legacy. This is for the children. We need a high school. That's what we're trying to do up here, is just work together collaboratively to get one built. But we have to be responsible of the numbers. That's our job. Thank you very much, everybody who presented tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Sure, if you want
I
to
know
follow
we're wrapping up, but I just have a question, Brian, while you're up there, because this, the MSBA, I mean, they're not an adversarial organization like, you know, like, you're talking about a one-year delay, should we decide that, Wonderland is not an appropriate site for whatever reason. But it's a one-year delay in a 50-year project. So I don't think that's that, I just saw, interest rates, they're coming down. We were told by our Director of Finance that we're locked in for 10 years at the interest rate that we get initially. So maybe that 1 year, there might be some increased costs. I mean, like these numbers here are a little different. I thought the last time you mentioned 35 million, now it looks like 60 some odd million. But, as interest rates decline, we can benefit from that too. So that would be in addition to any, because I just can't see the MSBA, saying, yes, Revere, you're going to get this much money, but now because we decide that, we want to take a second look and maybe we come up with a different decision that we originally had, they're going to penalize us. I mean, I don't know, maybe they would, but it just seems like it's not working in the spirit of what that organization is supposed to be for. And again, to going back, and we talked about education and how kids are going to be hurt at existing sites. I mean, you know as well as I do that there are many communities that have built at existing sites, Danvers, Winchester, Woburn. I know Stoneham is building on their new, at their existing site. So this is not way out of the way of, like asking something crazy to do here. I
agree with that.
So, but in any case, and I just have one last question, and I know, Mr. Chairman, you've been so patient, you haven't said a word yet, and I appreciate your patience with everybody, but just out of curiosity, and I don't even know, Brian, if you can answer this, maybe the clerk can, but where there's some real differences of opinion, we only need a simple majority vote for schematic design. Now, schematic design comes along, that gets voted, 6-5 or 8-3, whatever it is, whatever the vote comes down, but now the bond itself needs a supermajority, correct? So I think before we dive in to go into schematic design right away, let's make sure, that we know what we're doing, because I think you mentioned before that schematic design goes, now it presents a whole other set of circumstances. So I think before we race into getting this vote down, that at least from, your perspective and the administration, the school department, we're all, because you don't want to wind up in that situation either. Where we're,
It's true. The schematic
struggling
design
over a
vote
bond.
has to make it through the second vote. You're 100% right. Yeah.
Right.
So I just wanted to speak to the piece about MSBA. They are a wonderful organization, as you indicated, and we are hugely indebted to them for this program that even exists. I'm not sure if everybody knows, but MSBA is funded through 1 penny on the state sales tax. 1 penny on the dollar from the state sales tax is how MSBA is funded. And every year they have a list a mile long of communities that are looking to participate in the core program to build a new school or to do a major renovation addition on an existing school. But their process is definitely very deliberate. And one of the reasons that they make sure that we take all of these votes, like the votes that we've taken over the last 2 years, when we initially applied to them, you all had to vote and say, yes, Diane, you can submit that application to MSBA. And the City Council and the School Committee graciously did that in 2016, in 2017, and in 2018. And I know that in 2018, we had appealed to all of our state-level elected officials to also sponsor that application. And I don't know if that had any weight or not, but that's the application that finally got approved. And every step of the way, they require the vote of the City Council and the vote of the School Committee because they only have limited funding that's available. And they want one of their key priorities in doing a funding agreement with a municipality is the promise that the municipality is all in and ready. And that's why they make city councils and school committees vote over and over and over in every step of the way. So they are definitely a very benevolent group, and I think that, as Brian said, they may or they may not allow us to continue if we were to make a major shift at this point in time. They could say, no, we don't think that's a viable option. We're not putting our money there on that existing high school site. We haven't approved that. You gave us something else to work with, and that's where we've been working from. Or they could say, you can go ahead and do that, but because you have to repeat feasibility study, as Brian mentioned, we would have to do that. All of the work that we've done for the last year plus would have to be repeated because it's in a new place, it's a new section. We got to understand the soil and the land and the positioning and all of that differently than it is on Wonderland right now. We've been working with the assumption that it was going to be on Wonderland since that approval happened. I forget when that was. Where's Brian? When did we get the approval?
That transition 2 Decembers ago.
So 2 Decembers ago, when the city council and the school committee and everybody voted and said, yes, Wonderland is a spot, that's where we've been moving from since then. All of that work would need to be repeated. And so MSBA would have to look at their funding, which goes fiscal year, just like all of ours does, and determine where they can put us back in a line to start over again. So there really are huge risks that, and I do think that MSBA is a hugely benevolent organization. We should think of them that way and think of them as partners that do want to work with us, but they're definitely restricted by what their requirements are in process and policy. That's going to be a difficult switch at this time to go back to any other site than Wonderland. Not impossible, but definitely a challenge.
Thank you.
Just a
I'll have you
correction.
follow up.
Thank
Okay.
you. Just a correction. It was not 2 Decembers ago that Wonderland was voted for. Absolutely was not. I was not on the
All right,
council.
All right, at the end of the day.
No, I have the dates.
Okay.
So I'm just,
I don't-
Worth addressing. Wonderland was selected as the
was
preferred
the date?
option 2 Decembers ago. That's not when the eminent domain happened. At
okay.
the end of the
All right, all right.
PSR.
No. When the council was presented with it, was not 2 years ago.
No.
It was, I mean.
It was not 2 years ago. I was
Decembers
not
ago
on the
is
council.
14 months ago? It's 14.
When we selected it as the preferred
2021 is when it came in front of us.
Point of information.
It's at the end of the PSR.
I was here when we voted on it, which means it was done at the beginning of last year.
Yes, it was 2021, when we voted.
Right.
That's what I'm talking about.
When the,
That's not, oh, so we're talking 2 different things then?
Yes,
Okay.
there's 2 different things being
I'm saying
discussed.
it was a year ago when it
Yes.
was voted for.
2 Decembers ago, the building committee selected the preferred option. If that took 1 month to get here to December, I don't think that's a big difference. The point was, we have been working on that for well over a year. That's the truth. We, the project team, have not been working on the existing site for all of last year.
I agree, okay.
Yeah.
That-
So it's
Okay.
wording. I'm
Are
trying
we
to-
in
We're talking
agreement?
about 2 different things.
Okay, great, thank you. Okay, well, it's been a 2-hour meeting, and I haven't said much, which I'm sure some people would prefer. I will say, this process has been going on, obviously, for 3+ years, but we, as a city council, has just received the ability of a breakdown of what the funding source may or may not be, okay? So, I hear that we need a rush, and, what are we doing? This is a $470 million project. It warrants the meetings that we're having. And some might not like the numbers are always changing, but it's not a vote that we need and should just push through, okay? So the reason we're having these meetings is because up to today, we haven't received any of this stuff, okay? So how, in fact, can we make a funding decision without knowing how it's going to be funded? And a gentleman said in the audience, and I just want to clarify one thing, because it's great to see people here, it's great to see people that want a high school. I want a high school as well. I don't think there's been one person on this council that said they don't want a high school. So the fact that we need a high school is the obvious. The problem that is had is throughout the selection site, okay? From the day we selected this site, okay, whether it's in the building committee, starting off in the building committee, to interviewing contractors, we had a number in place. That number has increased almost 100. First, it started at $120 million, which we were blindsided by, which is not fair to the council. I believe the school committee was blindsided by it as well. Okay, they weren't given enough time to look at it, and they weren't happy as well. Some people on the school committee weren't happy. Some people on the building committee weren't happy that they weren't given the enough time. That's not fair to this board and this council. So I don't want to hear that we need to rush this through. If these are delays, this is not delays due to the city council. That's it. It's not the delay. It's not because of the city council that if it gets delayed. The numbers weren't given to us for 3 years on how to fund it, and now we have projections. And to this date, I still don't have numbers of, I know I have percentages, and I think I'll talk to Mr. Viscay about it. I'd like to see some more numbers that feed that, to be honest with you. And I have one more question.
Yeah.
Let me.
No, I just want to know which numbers you want.
Yeah. That being said, while you're here, Mr. Mayor, this projected gaps, we're basing the seal, the eminent domain at still 29.5. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. So
and we have built in a contingency. So in the details of the.
I mean, everybody's getting blown away by numbers because there are numbers all over the place. So, it would be nice to get these in advance rather than getting numbers the day of the meeting.
So there is a contingency that's built into our projections, and as I said, we'll be happy to kind of share. I wanted to give a high level because I wanted to make sure that everyone could see.
No, I can follow.
Some very general and basic notions.
But what
and
I'm saying,
where we're
what I
planning to
am
go.
saying is the projected gap is based at a $29 million
No,
purchase price.
it's based on a projected payment of eminent domain of 29 million plus an additional contingency that we built in over the course of 4 or 5 years, and going out into the out years, which after, and Chief Financial Officer Viscay said this, after 2029 or 2030, we don't have a financial problem, right? Like we'll have projected surpluses going out, but these years are going to be lean, and the contingencies that were built in through those lean years because
But we
we
still
knew.
don't have a number on that contingency, is what you're saying.
So
I don't.
I can
don't-
add it up.
Tell me where to.
There were. I think we had about.
We can do it
10 to
offline.
$15 million that was built in as a contingency going out in the out years. So starting in '24 and going out to 20.
So you're basing
30.
that final sale price at 29 plus the 15 million?
We
Is that-
have a contingency
Okay,
in
is
the
that what
event
that it goes-
We've
goes
heard
to
that
that?
loud and clear from the council that they were
Okay.
concerned that cost would come up over the 29 million.
Yes.
We don't believe that. We've hired the best people in the state and then I think in the country to do it. And we're confident with the 29 million, but knowing that the city council that was concerned for them,
Yeah.
we built that into our projections and our financial plan to make sure that, again, that would be more than likely an additional bond, so it wouldn't be, we would be required to send that money up front. We could kind of bake that into the next, few years.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Were there other, what other numbers are you interested in?
I just looked at this.
Okay.
Half of
Okay.
it I can't even see, to be honest with you, because it's pretty late, so the numbers are, but I'll look at it and we can discuss that offline as well.
Yeah, and I guess what we'll do, the free cash numbers are available in our budget. I'm happy to give breakdowns of each of these funding sources.
Sure, that's what I was hoping for.
The building permits from Suffolk Downs. We can look back at the city-owned property auctions. We had a year where we had $3 or $4 million in property auctions.
In the projections.
And we can project them out, right?
Yeah, they're all
And-
projections anyway, right?
Yep, and we
So-
can give current fund balances for
So-
each one of them as well.
No worries. So I guess my concern is, let's not forget that the reason that this has been delayed, I wouldn't even say delayed, because we have the right to review it, but the fact of the cost increasing by almost $100 million was a reason for it to be looked at. So I just financially just don't make those decisions based on without any information. So, especially if my name's to it. So let's not forget that. But moving forward, I believe this has been our 4th or 5th meeting on it. I'm glad to see that we've gotten some information, and I'm sure we'll have some more questions as time goes on. But if there are no other questions, we can adjourn for the evening. Thank you.